David, what happened?
What happened? Well, the Republicans played politics with our country. I mean, they made it very clear from the second they came in, they wanted to make sure this president failed. And they were willing to take this country to the brink because they believed the poll numbers were on their side, and they were willing to do whatever it took to bring this president down. So that's one thing that happened. But going back to the question, I mean, jobs and like it's very easy to talk about jobs and how to create jobs, but this is what we desperately need to do in this country, and we're not doing it. We're too busy playing politics. We're too busy. We have too many career politicians back there. They're so concerned about keeping their own job and not doing what's best for this country, and it's very, very concerning. We have, in terms of Ventura County and creating jobs here in Ventura County, as we create jobs nationwide, it's only going to help Ventura County. But we have great, amazing assets here, and I'm concerned that we're losing those assets. I mean, I toured Haas the other day, and they're talking about leaving and going to Texas, and that's 1,500 jobs that we're going to lose. And I think also, as your next Congress member, I would put pressure on some of the giants here in Ventura County, and not pressure, but urge them to hire a little bit more within. We have great colleges here, and an ability for them to a feeder program for them to get hired instead of bringing people over from India and bringing them over from other countries. We need to be looking to hire a little bit more within.
I know we've spoken about a little bit, including the local economy, but I'm interested. What would you do if you're a member of Congress, either to work on the national economy or locally? So you can answer locally or nationally. What do you think you could do in Congress on that? David?
Well, I have worked on the national economy as a member of business development for Rocketdyne. I was the national expert on civil space programs and commercial satellites, and worked with my peers in many other companies in Washington, D.C. to develop those type of businesses and to do a 10-year forecast and help steer investments, both public and private, into those kinds of technologies. So that's something that, as a member of Congress, I will ask to be on the Space and Science and Technology Committee to use some of that expertise to start driving investments back into that area, because as we've gone to occupy other countries, we've taken money away from civil space and other programs that have provided so many technological innovations for this country. And in the last question, I explained what I want to do locally here. I see great latent potential for green technology growth along our own 101 corridor here, and we have incredible talent that we can use to create all sorts of technologies we haven't even thought of yet. So as the congressman for Ventura County, I will be looking for programs that will help us to focus that kind of investment right here in Ventura County, and to develop that technology corridor into the potential that it really has.
David, answer national or local issues on the economy.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that business is the backbone of this country, small business and entrepreneurs. That's where the new jobs are going to be coming from. And we have to create an environment where small business feels comfortable to risk, to expand, to grow. And unfortunately, right now, that's not what's happening. We have to create an environment where they feel like taking a little bit more risk. But there's so many businesses out there also that, because of the tax code, they're withdrawing. They're not sure what's going to happen with the tax code. They don't know what's going to happen with their taxes. So what happens? They pull back. They don't expand. They don't hire anybody else. They don't grow. They don't try to buy that other business. They don't. And we create an environment like we have right now, which is just stagnant, no growth whatsoever. So we have to. That has to be corrected.
Steve?
Well, I'll take a crack at both sides of that, national and local. One, as an economist with my degree from Brown, I feel very comfortable talking about what the great benefits are for this country in the long run balancing its budget, because deficit spending then ends up taking dollars away from private industry that could be using that money to invest in all kinds of innovation that make America great. And that's why I go back and point out the 5 most prosperous years in the history of the United States were 1994 to 1999. Those were the same years that we started to get the Clinton balanced budget effect here in the United States, and private investment was not getting pushed out. We were moving towards not just, we had budget surpluses, we were moving towards starting to pay off the national debt. That's a great long-term goal, and I think I can talk common sense about that as a congressman back in Washington and here in Ventura County. Meanwhile, here in Ventura County, I would do what I've been doing on the Board of Supervisors, and that is I think that I have, after 10 years of being on the Board of Supervisors, a great appreciation for the diversity of the Ventura County economy. It is more than just the biotech corridor of Amgen. It's more than just the green technologies that are starting to sprout up here. But it's also the agricultural industry that is critical to giving us diversity. And I think in the long run, it's going to be one of the great assets. As energy costs go up, being located close to your food source is going to be really important. And the bases that we have, the Haas, we need to start bringing manufacturing back. And I have 2 thoughts about that. One, when it comes to agriculture, critical issue for agriculture is going to be water. And we have to find ways for agriculture to be able to be productive and very efficient with water here in Southern California. And we also have to find ways to be creative about getting water to ag so that ag can stay profitable. As these water rates go up and up, it gets more and more difficult for them to be successful. And the other thing is I really welcomed, and we have to have fresh thinking, and I really welcomed President Obama saying we need to start bringing manufacturing back. And when you think about it, years ago I went to visit Haas Engineering, and it's not that we're going to lose their 1,500 jobs, it's that they want to expand another 1,500 jobs here, and they're thinking twice about whether they want to do that expansion. But because I was there at Haas years ago, one of the great selling points is our climate, our economy, our high quality of life here. Their air conditioning and heating cost are so much lower than almost any place else in the world, they talked about, because they're on the Oxnard Plain. And I would really try to sell Ventura County. And as a congressman, I would really try to sell Ventura County and the unique things that we can sell. You can get high-tech industries, you can get clean industries, you can get high-wage jobs to come here because of the great quality of life we have here.
Thank you. For our last question, it's on Wall Street reform. Because we're coming to the end of the evening, I'm going to ask the candidates to just keep it a little bit shorter. But many Republicans want to repeal Barack Obama's Wall Street reforms. How important is that we protect these reforms?
Well, listen, one reason we're in this mess that we're in is because there was no reform in Wall Street. I mean, there was no regulation of Wall Street. They were able to just run wild. And we have to regulate Wall Street, and I believe it's silly to think otherwise. Now, that being said, we can't go too far and over-regulate to a point where there's not enough growth and not enough growth going on. But you always have to find that delicate balance. But one big reason we're in this problem that we're in is because Wall Street ran wild, and there was no one there to regulate them.
Steve?
There's no question that Wall Street's probably become the biggest special interest in Washington in terms of the amount of money that they're funneling to Washington, D.C., to elected officials, congressmen, senators, the parties, everybody else. And when they came and they started pushing for deregulation, it became very difficult for those people that wanted to keep those regulations in to be able to defend that. Regulators who said this does not make common sense did not have the voice to be able to overcome the lobbyists from Wall Street that were really pushing to say, yes, this deregulation is okay, yes, that. And you got to the point where the regulators really did not understand what was going on. I think there's no question that a major cause of that problem, when you look at our international competitors, some of them didn't have anywhere near the crisis that we had because they had stronger regulations. They didn't have the same crisis with their banking industry. So we absolutely have to keep the regulations regulation on there. It was a huge mistake to let it off. And I know you're pushing us time-wise. I got something else if I had time, but that's great.
David, briefly.
Yeah, briefly, I think we were all shocked to find out that the public was on the hook for when big banks fail because they're too big to fail and we have to bail them out. And I know there are efforts to try and deal with that with regulation now, but I don't think it's enough. And I'm the only candidate that's talking about breaking up the 6 largest banks, because if they're too big to fail, and we're on the hook for it, then it's not in the public's interest to have banks that big. In fact, I just produced a commercial on that very subject that's available on YouTube, and it's something that I'll fight hard for once I'm in Congress.
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have this evening. I want to thank our guests, David Cruz, Thayne, Supervisor Steve Bennett, and City Council Member David Pollock.